All right, today we are diving into one of the most explosive, most misunderstood, and honestly, most dangerous books in all of philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche's The Antichrist. This wasn't just some academic text for him. He wrote it in a white-hot blaze of creativity right before his final mental collapse, and he himself called it a declaration of war.
And you know what? He wasn't kidding. The entire book is built around one absolutely radical question. What if everything you've ever been taught about morality, about being good, being humble, being compassionate, what if all of that wasn't the path to virtue, but was actually a kind of conspiracy against our own human greatness? That is the challenge Nietzsche throws right in our faces.
So to unpack this massive idea, we're going to follow Nietzsche's line of attack. First, we'll look at the world he was reacting against, a world he saw as built on pity. Then we'll get into his final attack itself. From there, we'll dissect his diagnosis of Christianity as a kind of sickness, explore the new morality he wanted to build in its place, and finally, we'll trace the incredible shockwaves this book is still sending through our world today.
Okay, first up, a world built on pity. Because to really understand Nietzsche's rage, you first have to understand the moral world he was so desperate to smash to pieces.
So picture this. It's the late 1800s. And yeah, science is starting to chip away at old religious beliefs, but the ethics of Christianity, they were stronger than ever. Ideas like pity for the weak, humility, sacrificing yourself for others, these were seen as the absolute bedrock of a civilized society. For pretty much everyone, this was the solution to human problems. But for Nietzsche, this was the problem.
See, Nietzsche saw this huge, crucial shift in history. He would look back to an era like the Renaissance, and he saw that the values were completely different. Back then, strength, ambition, a kind of aristocratic pride, what the Italians called virtù, those were the things to celebrate. So for him, this modern focus on pity and humility, well, that wasn't progress. It was a decline, a fundamental weakening of the human spirit.
Which brings us right to his final, absolutely furious assault, The Antichrist. This wasn't just another book for him. This was everything, the culmination of his entire life's work.
And the context here is just staggering. In the second half of 1888 alone, Nietzsche churned out 4 entire books. It was this manic, unbelievable burst of creative energy, and The Antichrist was right at the heart of that storm. Just a few weeks after finishing it, he suffered a total mental collapse. I mean, he was writing like a man who believed he had a truth so urgent, so vital, that it absolutely could not wait.
And this is that truth, right here in his own uncompromising words. For Nietzsche, Christianity wasn't just, mistaken. It was actively hostile to the very best, the strongest, the most creative parts of humanity. He really saw it as a system that was designed from the ground up to hold down what he called the higher type of man.
Now, to really get his attack, you have to see it as a diagnosis. Nietzsche wasn't approaching Christianity like a theologian debating ideas. He was more like a physician examining a patient. And the disease he identified, he called it decadence.
So let's be super clear about what he meant by this word. For Nietzsche, decadence isn't about moral decay in the way we usually use it. It's almost a biological term. An animal or a person is decadent when they lose their healthy instincts for survival and for growth, and they actually start choosing things that are harmful to them. He was arguing that all of modern humanity was choosing values that were, at their core, anti-life. And the main culprit, the number one symptom of this disease, was pity. He didn't see pity as a virtue at all. He saw it as a depressant, something that literally drains our energy, multiplies suffering by making it contagious, and works against all those powerful feelings, the tonic passions that make us feel strong and alive. And here's his brutal, step-by-step logic. He argued that when we make pity the highest virtue, we're actively working against nature. We're preserving what is weak, what is failing. And by doing that, we're interfering with the harsh, but in his view, necessary process of selection that strengthens a species over time. The ultimate result for Nietzsche is a whole society that is weaker, sicker, and more pessimistic about life. But okay, where did this whole anti-life morality even come from? Nietzsche's answer is another one of his key concepts, ressentiment. It's a French word, and it means this deep-seated poisonous resentment that the powerless feel towards the powerful. He argued that the weak, because they couldn't win in reality, they staged a kind of spiritual revenge. They couldn't be strong, so they just declared strength to be evil. They were meek, so they declared meekness to be good. And this, right here, is the origin of what he famously called slave morality. This whole psychological revenge created a fundamental split in how we see the world. Nietzsche said Christianity basically invented a fictitious world, with concepts like God, the soul, sin, and afterlife, for one single purpose: to devalue the only world that actually exists. The natural world, the world of instinct and power and earthly life, was made to look sinful and ugly compared to some fantasy. It was a grand, elaborate scheme to say no to reality itself.
But here's the thing. Nietzsche wasn't just a critic. He wasn't just trying to tear things down. His real goal was to clear the rubble to make room for something new. He called for nothing less than a transvaluation of all values. And the foundation of his new morality is the will to power. Now, this is another one of those terms that gets twisted all the time. It's not just about political domination or being a tyrant. For Nietzsche, the will to power is the fundamental instinct of all life. It's that inner drive to grow, to expand, to overcome obstacles, and to express its own strength. A plant reaching for the sun, an artist creating a masterpiece, a philosopher building a new idea. For Nietzsche, these are all expressions of the will to power. And this leads directly to his shocking, world-changing redefinition of good and evil. Good is no longer about pity or humility. Good is simply whatever increases that feeling of power, whatever affirms life. And evil or bad, well, that's just whatever comes from weakness, from decay, from that feeling of ressentiment.
So this all culminates in his famous call for a transvaluation of values. The best way to think about it is like this. Imagine a pyramid, and at the very top are values like humility and pity. Nietzsche wants to grab that pyramid and flip it completely upside down, so that strength, pride, creativity, and a powerful love for this earthly life, those things go back on top, creating what he called a noble morality.
So, as you can probably imagine, a book this radical created a massive and lasting shockwave. And its legacy, well, it's incredibly complex. I mean, his ideas basically detonated across 20th century thought. You had existentialists trying to figure out how to live in a godless world, postmodern thinkers who were deconstructing power, even early psychologists exploring the depths of the human psyche. They were all, in one way or another, working in a landscape that Nietzsche had completely reshaped.
But, and this is a huge but, we have to be really careful here. The sheer ferocity of his language, especially with concepts like the will to power and his attacks on the weak, left his work wide open to being twisted and misinterpreted. Most famously, of course, it was co-opted by the Nazis, an association that would have absolutely horrified Nietzsche, who hated German nationalism and anti-Semitism. His legacy is a powerful reminder that powerful ideas can be twisted into very dangerous weapons. When you boil it all down, Nietzsche's goal was to force us to create our own values, not just to blindly inherit them from the past. The Antichrist is his most powerful, most shocking demand that we do just that. And it leaves us with a question that's maybe more relevant today than ever. In a world where the old certainties have crumbled, who decides our values now? And on what basis do we decide?
This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.